Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. We have returned to Southern Utah for our episode today to the Dixie Center, the convention center located in Washington County. Again, our topic is water. But this time, instead of water for culinary use, we're going to talk about water making its way to the ocean. Now, water has always been a state sovereign right, and the handling of waterways, whether they are just part-time waterways like dry washes or rivers, have always been the domain of the state, unless they were navigable. But now even that is under dispute. As we will find out in today's show, we will discuss the issues of the Army Corps of Engineers and new regulations and rules that they are trying to impose that could block local developments of roads, highways, and bridges. Here with the story is Terry Wood.
In 1972, what became known as the Clean Water Act was implemented. Under this law, the Army Corps of Engineers was granted jurisdiction over the navigable waters of the United States. But now there's some question as to how far that jurisdiction extends.
We seem to be getting more and more federal regulations that create a lot of barriers and burdens to doing our normal county maintenance on our county roads or work that we do to facilitate travel for the general public.
We're charged with trying to protect the integrity of our nation's waters, and in some cases help to improve those.
In the past, the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers generally dealt with navigable waters of the United States. But recent decisions in Washington County, Utah regarding the Virgin River have blurred what waterways can be considered as navigable.
At this point in time, we've determined that portions of the Virgin River to be navigable, in fact, meeting criteria of having both navigation and an interstate commerce connection.
The change in the rules has brought hundreds of dry washes into question. Do the waters that flow intermittently in the desert have a significant effect on the Virgin River? If so, counties would need to check with the Army Corps for permits on almost every project they undertake.
You know, when you've got to go get a permit to go grade your roads or clean the borrow ditch or whatever you're going to do, it just really complicates issues. It makes it, you can't do it in a timely manner. It makes it more expensive to have to go through all that extra paperwork.
Under that new ruling, we're standing here at a prime example. We have a county road here that has a wash running through it. Every time we grade this road, if we move any dirt over to the edge where it drops into where this culvert comes out into this wash, it's considered adding fill material to waters of the U.S.
However, in our interview with the Corps, it was pointed out that a permit might not be necessary every time.
There may be an exemption, so not every activity requires a permit. If it's an existing facility, if there's a culvert that just needs to be replaced or upgraded, but it's not going to increase the length.
Counties also have to grapple with the Corps changing their jurisdiction and superseding county authority where previously there was no conflict.
We've asked them, give us the guidelines, tell us so we can look and see if it's jurisdictional, and if it's obviously not, we'll just do the work, and we've basically been told, no, we need to come and look at each one.
Because, as we've seen, the way that we determine whether or not something is jurisdictional changes. It could be a Supreme Court case. It could be a rule or a law that's passed that says, okay, Corps, you no longer look at these, or you now look at this where you never did before. Just because we have determined something is or is not jurisdictional at one point in time, it's always advisable to call and visit with us.
The constant changes have made county officials wary of the Army Corps, especially when it comes to development.
You know, we're not here to impede construction or development. What we are here to do is ensure that what activities do occur don't adversely affect folks downstream.
You think you've got an issue successfully dealt with, then all of a sudden the goal line's been moved and it's no longer attainable, at least through the process you've just been through. You have to start all over again. It's not just the Army Corps, it's not just the EPA, it's regulations in general that come from the feds.
For the county seat, I'm Terry Wood.
Thank you, Terry, for that story. We are going to continue our conversation, and we will look at some of the challenges that the Army Corps' policy is not only financial, but on a timeline that's creating for counties, municipalities, and other individuals who are trying to improve roadways, pathways, or even access to dry washes, beds, and streams. We'll be back on the county seat in just a minute.
Have you ever wanted to go on a vacation to Mars? What about a visit to the Old West? Impossible, right? Well, forget what you think is real. In southern Utah's Kane County, other worlds are just an ATV ride away. The Old West lives on in every sunset. From the downtown streets of Little Hollywood to the vistas that have inspired the world. Never find yourself closer to home and yet farther than you've ever been. Southern Utah's Kane County, where anywhere is possible.
The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration. SITLA manages 3.5 million acres of Utah lands with the express purpose of furthering the education of Utah students while promoting local industry, oil and gas, even residential development, all at the same time. Through the careful use of trust lands, we distributed more than $22 million to Utah schools last year. The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, building the state's permanent school fund.
How would you spend an extra day in Utah Valley? Stay one more day. Visit utahvalley.com to make reservations. Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Almost 45% of the oil produced in Utah, 7.8 million barrels, comes from Duchesne County. That oil feeds our state economy, provides job growth, and supports local business. Here in Duchesne County, we're working to make Utah an economic, cultural, and technological leader. Whether you're here for business or pleasure, Duchesne County will welcome you with open arms and invite you to explore all the beauty of the Uinta Mountains. Duchesne County, close enough for business, far enough to get away.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our topic today is the Army Corps of Engineers, some problems that have developed in southern Utah as they were originally, as I understand it, gentlemen, trying to develop the road and build the road out to the new airport. So joining us today for our conversation, Commissioner Denny Drake and Ron Whitehead, who is the Public Works Director for Washington County. Gentlemen, thank you for being here on the show today. I mean, when were you first aware that you guys were having a problem with your road?
Well, when they had red tagged the road and actually shut down the bidding process for the second phase of the road out of the airport. And with that, there was some appeals filed with the Army Corps of Engineers, and we actually met with the Army Corps of Engineers, including the Salt Lake office, to discuss the criteria for jurisdiction. And in the discussion, they had no criteria. What they had was call us, we'll determine whether it's jurisdictional or not. We asked for details as to water flows, flood lines, high water marks. What's the criteria to determine whether this was jurisdictional or non-jurisdictional? And again, the answer we got was, call us, we'll let you know. And so it became an issue. We appealed their decision. The state, including UDOT, included with them, and Washington County appealed their decision. We sent it to Sacramento, which is, and we don't know, the regional office where we hoped it would be satisfied, and we actually did get that particular ruling overturned. They determined that those two washes were not jurisdictional, but we won the battle and lost the war. In the same letter, they had informed us that the Virgin River is now navigable, which it had never been declared navigable before. And what that does is it changes the dry wash criteria. Before, the closest water to Washington County that was considered navigable was Lake Mead. Now we have the Virgin River being declared navigable. Now, the natives probably are the most concerned about that because the Virgin River in most summers dries up and it's tough to imagine commerce coming up the Virgin River or going down the Virgin
Yeah, you can
River.
hike.
As defined as navigable anyway, so.
Well, and let's look at that for a minute. What are the criteria, you know, Ron, from your perspective, what do you understand the criteria being that they've got to meet?
Now they say that if there is any measurable amount of sediment or pollutant reaches that navigable waterway, then they're not doing their job. So if we're crossing a wash that's 5 miles out from the nearest stream that runs 10 miles to the river, if there's a flash flood or a thunderstorm that puts water in that now carries any measurable amount, which is so minute nowadays, you know, it's unimaginable, any immeasurable amount into the stream, into the river, they say now that that's affecting their jurisdiction. So they've taken control over all the dry washes, saying these need to be determined if they're jurisdictional. So we can't maintain our roads without talking to them, see if it's jurisdictional, if we have to go through additional permitting process or cost for their
How can you budget
services.
for that?
We can't.
And the fact of the matter is that the history of this goes back to the point that the state permit, each state can file for a permit. The state of Utah had a 404 permit, and in the process of the road to the airport being built, our permit had expired. And we had all the permitting done prior to that, but then they've determined that there is new criteria to be established for our permitting in Utah. Within that permitting, you have to do an environmental assessment basically with endangered species, archaeological, geological. There is actually a rule that you have to go 300 feet upstream. So there were some changes that were made that drastically affect the ability of the county to do regular maintenance on an existing road. And with that, if we had to do an EA for every time we crossed a dry wash, the maintenance on a road such as the Mataqua Road costs us about $30,000 annually. The permitting could cost us as much as $250,000 without doing the work. And the fact of the matter is it affects not just government entities, but with their jurisdictional declaration, it affects private property as well as public property. And so it is affecting development. A developer can't go in and just develop his property if he has a wash. And in fact, one of the washes that we were written up for was 11 inches wide and 8 inches deep. Well, in a thunderstorm, we'll get 15 of those in Washington County in this sand, and so the contribution into the Virgin River may be negligible, but it'll happen quite often, and it may be a new stream created without you even knowing it was being created. So the criteria that they've never established is probably the biggest problem we have, because we can't go in and say, okay, here's the criteria, we can look at this and say, we can do the work. But we can't say that because now, without criteria, they say, call us and we'll tell you what you do.
And I believe in the interview it alluded to the fact that, well, the best thing to do is just have us come spend a day with you and show us what you want to do and we'll figure it out.
That and their expanding jurisdiction is just killing us. I mean, now they've gone from a never navigable stream or river we have to now designating it as navigable, a traditional navigable waterway. To take it to the extreme, if you wanted to, you could go to a residence here in St. George. Any water that fell on the roof, went down through the downspout into the ditch, would make it to the Virgin River, and they could call jurisdiction on it.
Make you treat it on your property before you dump it into the gutter.
It could be that far-reaching.
I can't begin to think what kind of problems grazing would have.
Grazing, fertilizing on your lawn, anything, spraying weeds in your yard, they could now say that's restricted.
When it was passed, the original law, with the navigable being part of it, was directed at the rivers, the major rivers that were being polluted by industry.
And in our interview with them, they said, yeah, when the rivers caught on fire, that was a sign that there was a problem.
Right, and there's definitely problems, that those existing rivers need to be protected. We don't have a free-flowing river year-round. It may be ephemeral during the summer where it goes underground, but we don't have a free-flowing river. And the Virgin River was never to be part of that navigation. And so in the process, what they've done is gone past the legislation and by rule changed what we've always dealt with.
I want to actually go back and cover that process of events that went from legislation, courts, and rulemaking when we come back. We'll take a quick break here on the county seat. We're talking today from the Dixie Center in St. George about the Army Corps of Engineers and the conflicts with the county and their efforts to try and develop roads and transportation within the county. We'll be right back.
If you ever dreamt of running through an old west town, searching for outlaws, hiding behind the stable, or inside the old church with your 6-shooter by your side, well, your dreams have come true. Castlegate Town Shooting Range is the most detailed, most realistic, and outright most fun shooting range you've ever seen. The North Springs Shooting Range.
Compliments of the lady in gold. Hello, trouble.
Anything worth doing in this quiet little town? You look like the kind of man that could show a girl a good time.
You strike me as the kind of girl that likes a manicure and a massage.
How's that for a manicure?
I hate golf.
I was hoping for something a little more vigorous.
Vigorous, I can do.
And I thought you'd be riding side saddle.
What? I'm gonna regret this. How about that manicure?
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about the Army Corps of Engineers and it's the conflicts that it's created with development of highways, roadways, bridges, and maintenance for the Public Works Department here in Washington County. Because the rulings now that are requiring you to give them a call so they can come tour each day is by their own estimation, stems from the fact that the Virgin River is declared navigable, but you have a letter to the contrary.
We had heard that they were thinking about declaring the Virgin River navigable, and we had brought that up in our letter. And in our response to the letter, General William Grisoli from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers sent back a letter to us based on what we had filed the appeal on. And in that letter, he had stated further, and this is directly from his letter, the Corps is not evaluating the Virgin River as a navigable river. Then when the ruling came out, they declared that they had no jurisdiction over the two washes, but that the Virgin River is a navigable river. So even they know that it's not a navigable river. But in the process, what this has done is circumvented the Clean Water Act and given them a rule of law which they can work from. Because in the Clean Water Act, it's definitely stated navigable. They've tried to change that legislatively to remove the word navigable from the legislation, have not succeeded, but therefore the Army Corps has taken it by rule to designate whatever they want to designate as navigable. That's where I feel they've stepped their bounds.
If they look at any section as perhaps having an impact on a navigable section of waterway, I mean you could look at the Mississippi and follow all of its tributaries till you get out into the middle of, come up through Missouri, through the Platte, and you could be out in some farmer's field in Wyoming, and if it drains into that drainage, would that not make it come under their jurisdiction?
I mean, the Virgin River. At times it's a raging river, but 90% of the time you can wade across it at any particular point. We also have the Santa Clara, which is a drainage into the Virgin, which 99% of the time you can wade across, or you wouldn't even know it was a river. You'd think it's a ditch. But what we're having the struggle with is the cost and expense of permitting and the time frame to do that with, when we know and they know that it isn't jurisdictional. Therefore, to me, it's the hardest thing to justify. Here's a government that we live with and work for, And we want to be able to compromise, to willingly do the things that are right, and yet we don't get any guidelines. You know, it wouldn't be so bad if we knew what their criteria was so that we could establish what we need to do and how we need to do it.
That's a good place to take a break. We are going to take a break from the county seat. When we come back from our commercial break, we are going to take a few minutes and explore potential solutions, what the counties would like to see. Stay with us. We'll be back on the county seat.
What do you picture when you hear Rich County, Utah? Bear Lake adventure, snowmobile action, pristine skiing, spectacular solitude. Well, if that isn't what first came to mind, then you just don't know Rich County. The Bear Lake Monster Polar Plunge, snowmobiling Monte Cristo, ice fishing Bear Lake, skiing the backcountry, fishing at the Cisco Disco. Come and find out what you never knew you were missing. Rich County, Utah.
Unlimited opportunity for adventure. It's all about knowing where to look. ATV adventures, rock crawling events, art festivals, and wildlife events. The opportunities are limitless. Pick your adventure in Miller County.
Industry is the symbol of Utah. Beauty is what makes it unique. Nowhere else are these two qualities exemplified, like in Uinta County. Oil and gas extraction, pioneer history, the spirit of hard work and integrity that feed our state. Built in the middle of the most spectacular backdrop in the West, isn't it time you found the balance you've been looking for? Uinta County, Utah, where industry meets inspiration.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our topic today has been the Army Corps of Engineers and their expansion into areas that traditionally have not been under their purview, and with environmental concerns of water quality, they are questioning very small and minute projects, and we've got a point of view from our county representatives here. It would seem to me, as an outside casual observer, I look at this and I look at the taking navigable out and saying they've got jurisdiction over waterways and any tributaries to waterways, and if they're not navigable, that means that they basically have jurisdiction over every drop of water. And you may come to the day where you might not be able to stick a glass outside of your house and catch rainwater because it's their water, not yours, or not the state's, or not the water compact. I mean, doesn't this really run the risk of completely changing the entire nature of traditional water rights in the West?
Not just in the West. I think it changes the traditional water rights of every property owner and every person that drinks water throughout the United States. And we don't want to be sounding like rebels. All we want is to be able to negotiate, talk, and be sensible about the things that we have. We don't want to see our waters destroyed. We want to see clean water. We want to be able to drink the water. We want to be able to use the water. That's not the process. And if you talk about where governance of the land is best is on a local level, we know what the water's doing. We know where the water's going. We should be a part of that process. And what's being taken away is local government, local authority, giving it to federal authority who lives in Salt Lake City or in Sacramento, California, or Washington, D.C., without regard to those that live on the land. That's probably the major problem, is that we feel locally we're environmentalists. We don't want to see the environment destroyed. But they're claiming we're stupid and don't know how to govern, therefore they've got to take care of it. And we feel that we're intelligent enough to manage our own resource.
The counties have been depicted as these mass portrayers of destruction out on public lands, and the waterways is what they're looking at specifically right now. We go out to grade a road, and we're not there to fill in washes. We don't have time, money, or resources. We simply want to keep that road in a usable state for the traveling public, and that's all we do. And if we grade a road that goes down through a little wash, It's native material. We grade the road, goes down through the wash. If a flood comes down, takes it out, it's native material. There's nothing there that's some great, you know, poisonous thing that will kill all the waters in the U.S. And we live here. We want it to be a good place. We want to manage it as best we can, and that's always been our goal. But they're limiting us as to what we can do.
Well, do you feel that there is some risk that if this regulation goes too far, that it might affect other transportation rights because you'll be denied permits to maintain roads or improve them because they cross a dry wash that gets rain in it from time to time?
Well, it almost becomes a cost-effective measure. You've got to weigh what it's going to cost you to put a road in. If we have to go through major environmental assessments for every individual thing. Now, UDOT has a department that can handle those kind of issues, and they can review it. But if there's no criteria to review it to, and we have to go to the federal jurisdictional Army Corps to get that decision made, it not only delays the process, but it costs us over the long run to get it done.
If they can't establish a criteria, are you not afraid that you might actually have the situation where an individual federal manager on the ground may just make up something to meet his wishes and desires because there's no standard criteria by which you can work?
Absolutely. It becomes very subjective in my mind, and if you don't get along with the person you're dealing with, I could see you being turned down, where if you were getting along with another individual that was doing the study, you could get it done. I think they have to take some criteria and take it away from the subjectivity and make it a definitive number that we can deal with, that everyone can deal with, and it involves the locals in making it a potential change.
Well, gentlemen, this has been a really good discussion. You have a last thought?
They've changed their criteria you look at even in the waters, the flowing waters. It used to be the mean high water line. Now they've changed it to where it includes the floodway. And so they've expanded now out of the flowing water, which was the Army Corps, and the stream beds was the stream alteration. Now they've included to the floodway, which has raised it up even higher, so they claim more ground. But if we can go quickly back to what you said a minute ago about a citizen sticking a cup out and the water that fell from the sky could be claimed by the U.S. as their waters, we wouldn't allow to catch it. If you think back to Salt Lake just a few short years ago, there was a company built a brand new building. They put in an underground cistern. They caught the rainwater from the roof, put it in the cistern, and they were going to use it to irrigate their landscaping with, and they were told, no, you can't catch that water. That is not your water. It's happened.
There you go. Gentlemen, thank you. This has been a very good discussion today. Thank you for joining us on the County Seat. If you've got comments on this or you'd like to further interact with us, go to our website, and from there, go to our Facebook page. You can look for the show on YouTube as well. We'll look for you next week on the County Seat. Thank you.